Thanks for coming, everybody. My name is Mark Robinson from Games Analytics. We're an Edinburgh-based analytics company. You'll notice that my presentation was pretty provocative. I suppose the title actually might destroy that straight away, because obviously the real answer is that it's intuition and analytics. And as Nick was saying, you know, what we're about with analytics is actually to take the guesswork out of game development and how we manage our players. So what we've got in terms of our approach to this challenge, in free-to-play especially, is to create an environment, an analytics environment, that allows us to personalize the game for different types of players. Our starting point in this is that all players are different. They have different competencies, they've got different levels of expertise, they enjoy different things in the game. Some players are struggling and frustrated in your games, some players are happy and content. And actually, if you're giving the player an average experience, then you're probably not doing the best thing by them in terms of engaging with them, retaining them, and ultimately driving revenues from that relationship. So we take a quite holistic approach to the issue of how we manage players in the game. And I just wanted to take 20-25 minutes just to step through how we approach the way that we can build relationships with players in games to maximize engagement and maximize revenues. So I picked up a quote in Edge at the end of last year, which I really liked, because the games industry, and I've only been in the games industry for 3 years. Before that, I worked in sort of mainstream sectors, working with big brands like Heineken and with Royal Bank of Scotland and Office Depot, and doing customer analytics to really understand how they drive their CRM programs. So in transitioning into the games industry and working within this really dynamic environment, the industry has been going through this big change and dealing with all of these new skill sets in terms of understanding analysis and understanding data. Acquisition's a real issue as well. So it's not just about developing the game, there's all of these peripheral skill sets that now come to play, and it's been a real challenge for the industry. So I really like this quote which says, "The impact of free-to-play business model will hit consoles with the force of a meteor strike, and like dinosaurs, many gaming conventions of years past are liable to slump to the ground as dust chokes them." So the big guys, the Sonys, the Segas, the Microsofts of this world, even the EAs, are really trying to transition their businesses, especially with the new generation of consoles, and start to think about the player relationship for the first time. There's obviously been a lot of great companies that maybe didn't exist 5 years ago developing games with player relationship management at its heart. And this is a mindset change, and it's a significant mindset change to really get quite an intimate relationship with your players. And we're really, really fortunate in the games industry because actually we can collect quite a lot of rich data about how the player is progressing in the game, what features they like, how they're using resources, what items they're buying in the store. So we're actually a lot better off than when I worked for Office Depot, for example, in terms of understanding player behaviours. And I wanted just to spend a few minutes explaining how we approach this at Games Analytics. The second quote is my own, which is, "If you know your players, you'll build successful and profitable games." So it's player knowledge that really drives how you develop your games. And so it is intuition. We still need the great ideas. We still need the creative spark. But we also can add value by applying analytics and getting these quite different and contrasting skill sets to work collaboratively. So that's my thesis. So let's start with acquisition. We're going to go through acquisition, engagement, and revenues. We're going to go through the full player life cycle in a series of different case studies, because we actually now need to think about the fact that the game, the management of the game is an ongoing service, and we need to think carefully about the different players and what sort of stage of their playing life cycle they're in. In acquisition, as an analytics company, we focus on developing player relationships, engaging players, and driving revenues through good experiences actually in the game. And we're looking at the acquisition side of this. We're thinking it's such a difficult space. Driving the high costs of CPI, where a lot of the time CPI now is outstripping the LTV that you can make. There's a real challenge. Some of our clients are working with over 30 different acquisition providers and trying to constantly find effective acquisition in terms of what is viable, what is going to turn into a profit. This is a big challenge in the industry. Some ad spend is a great marketing barrier right now. $250,000 is nothing in terms of a marketing budget, and some companies blow that away. So if you're a small guy or even a medium-sized guy, it's really hard to compete in this area. But one thing that strikes us is that we're still working with retention rates that are frankly abysmal. If you're only getting 30% of your players back for a second session, we should be ashamed of ourselves, really, because there shouldn't be. Why would that be happening? If somebody's come into the game, they've obviously not had a very good 60 seconds, or there's something gone wrong in terms of the value exchange. These people are giving us their time and their attention, and we mustn't be giving them back what they want in terms of experience. So that's a real challenge. So if we focus more on engagement, and we can increase that day one retention from, let's say, 25% to 50%, then all of a sudden the LTV changes, and then that makes the acquisition budget a lot more viable. So if we start and look in the right areas to solve the problem, we firmly believe that engagement is where you should be looking, because that is something that can change dramatically. And therefore, once you are getting those levels of engagement, you can go back into the acquisition field a lot more confident that you're going to get a profitable player through your game. So let me just take a little bit of time to talk through what we see as some of the barriers to engagement. We have a consulting tool, a benchmark tool, where we look at different free-to-play game designs. We've worked on over 100 games now. And we score each aspect of engagement, monetization, time loops, all the different aspects of the game, 50 criteria in our scoring system. And one of them is obviously retention and engagement. And these are the sorts of things that we see coming up time and again in terms of blockers, why players leave the game. So we score between 0 and 10. If you're 7 to 10, you're doing a good job. It's a good experience. It's competent. If you're 4 to 6, it's okay. It could be improved. And if you're 0 to 3, then it's frankly not good enough. It's a bad experience. So the figures on the right-hand side here are the percentage of games in our benchmark that have scored 0 to 3. For 40% of games that we've worked on, the monetization is too early and too harsh. That's why we're getting bad retention rates. 38%, the difficulty is too aggressive. It scales too quickly, especially for new players. And as a developer, it's very difficult, I think, to leap outside your own mindset into the mindset of a new player. That's a real challenge. But there's so many people coming into games for the first time that previously didn't play games because of the new devices that are out there. But we really got to think about these new players. And one of the most effective things that we do in terms of increasing retention rates is really quite simple. It's giving new players, novices and newbies, the easy path, the less difficult challenges, the smaller tables on poker. In multiplayer games, we have less opponents. We do some matchmaking in terms of capability. And we give the expert players the fast track to the deeper parts of the game where they're going to get more challenged. They're going to actually engage. And so this is, at a very basic level, showing that there are different types of players and they're getting different experiences. If we can drive those different experiences, then our retention rates will increase dramatically. So there's one example. And then the onboarding process not clear, so whether the tutorial hasn't been clearly signposted, or the momentum's wrong in terms of how the game is learned by new players. The lack of resources. So this is linked to the monetization being too harsh, and sometimes playing the game you'll run out of gems or coins or whatever it is too quickly. And there's this concept that we've developed called the threshold of engagement. And we can see from the data that we collect when players actually click over from exploring the game and trying the game actually to being engaged in the game. And so if you can do all of these things well before the threshold of engagement, then you will be able to substantially improve your retention rates. So this is a starting point for us. And we also drive data through this. So our technology collects rich data from the game. We can put figures for individual games against each of these blockers. We can also see people moving through the threshold of engagement. And then they start to have a reasonably long first session. They come back with a lot of momentum. And we can see them building and accelerating and engaging with the gameplay. None of this is about monetization at the minute. This is all about engagement. And we push monetization back to when we know that players are engaged. The tricky thing is that different players move through this threshold of engagement at different times. And the behavior that they have up to the threshold of engagement can be quite different. So this is where we need to try and personalize the game, giving players options or targeting interventions so that we actually can make the game responsive to their playing style. So, you know, this is where we need to get to as an industry, and I think game personalization is the answer to a lot of the issues that we find in terms of the viability of some games. This is the stuff that we like and we see as examples of really good practice in the industry. There's different stuff around some of these very successful games that we think has been very well done. We've got a lot to learn, but let's learn from our peers. And some of this stuff is a real solution to some of the blockers that we've talked about before. And you'll have other examples of games that you've looked at and you've studied and you like in terms of how the game is balanced. So when we're kind of starting to think about these concepts, we're starting to think about the players, then what is it that we want to measure that will describe their playing style and start us to get an insight into the mindset of the players that are in your game? So competency is a really key one. And competency can be measured through win-loss ratios, kill-death ratios. You know, that sort of thing is a vital component to thinking about what experience the players having. Are they winning all the time? Are they sporadically winning? Are they losing all the time and getting beaten up? And what is their risk of leaving based on that experience? Momentum is a key one. Is there momentum building? Is it accelerating? Are they working across the features? Are they using all of the resources well? Or is the momentum declining and tailing off? So if it's tailing off, then making an intervention in real time, gifting, rewarding, encouraging, that's another way that we can respond to what the player's telling us and to actually improve the retention rates. Competitiveness, collaboration, aggression, how sociable players are, whether they like customizing, all of these things we can figure out and we can build into segmentation. So we can really start to get inside the player's mind. And that's the great thing about data analysis, that it actually allows us to understand the dynamics of the different players in our game. And we can then help that drive the creative ideas and the imagination and the intuition, but it's directed all of a sudden. So the analyst can go to the designers with caricatures and pen pictures of different players that really sparks the imagination. This is why it's analytics and intuition, not analytics versus intuition. A very quick example of what I mean. Deathmatch MMO tournament style game. where we looked at competency, we looked at momentum, we looked at aggression levels, we looked at how the game was rewarding people, and we saw that there was two quite contrasting playing styles. The kamikaze killers were shooting everything up. They were spending a lot of time out of the game healing. They were very engaged, but they weren't monetizing because the reward system was too balanced in their favor. It was over-rewarding them for their gameplay. So they were grinding and getting access to upgrades and new stuff without the need to monetize, which was a missed opportunity. The strategic elite guys were much more specific, sniper-type behavior, conserved their ammo. They were very expert players, but the game actually was under-rewarding them. So they were leaving, which was a shame because the game was designed around, mainly around that playing style. So we were able to work with our client to rebalance the reward system and implement some real-time messaging to send first payment bundles to the kamikaze killer guys, the guys that were shooting everything up and spending lots of time out of the game healing. Because they were being rewarded less because we'd balanced the economy better, they were actually now converting to paying players because they were super engaged and they wanted more ammo and weapons to fight back. The strategic elite, actually, because of the new reward system and the way that we balanced the economy, naturally their retention rates started to improve with us without having to intervene with in-game messaging. So we changed the underlying dynamic of the game for these guys to give them more rewards. And actually what they did was that they started to monetize themselves in a few levels' time because of that engagement that we'd built into the experience. So this is where we can start to think about matching a really clear understanding of playing behaviors onto the sort of player life cycle that we want players to experience. So this is a traditional arc of how players come on board games, master games, and then ultimately leave. Retaining and engaging players in the first instance is the obvious thing to do. Socializing in the next phase. Monetizing only after that, so monetization is quite late. It's fine for people to monetize themselves, off their own inclination, but don't start pushing monetization measures too early. It's the worst thing that you can do. And let's be as appropriate and timely as possible in terms of when you make that offer. And let's make it a really good offer with stuff that they want. So you can actually then run wild in terms of your imagination as to what messaging you want to push through the system. So this is where we start to talk about not so much analytics, but player relationship management. Our technology is devised specifically to manage the relationship with the players in real time, to be responsive in terms of what the players are experiencing, and then provide a personalized intervention, whether that's making the mission difficulty slightly less for players that are struggling a bit, whether it's to fast-track expert players deeper in the game, whether it's to offer first payment bundles at the right time. All of this personalizes the game experience, and it allows us to make these interventions in real time so that the players actually feel like the game is being responsive to them and responding to their playing style. So this is the way ahead, this is the future. Let's get away from thinking that the game is the same for everybody, and let's start to think about the different types of players and build those relationships, because if you can build those relationships in one game, then you're much more likely to convince players to engage with you on the next game and the game after that and work across the portfolio. So now we're solving our acquisition problem by first and foremost concentrating on engagement, making sure that we're doing as much as we can to make the game profitable, and therefore the LTVs are driven up, which then comes back to the start again, where we actually can drive more acquisition budget because we know that we're being much more effective. And I think that this is the only way to try and get out of this vicious circle of rising CPIs. So, as I said before, I used to work for Office Depot and these sorts of guys in understanding their customers and building CRM strategies. It's really exciting how we can use analytics to drive game development, game design, player relationship management, understanding the players, because we do genuinely have a lot of information about the players, how they're responding, and supporting them through that experience. We're actually pretty unique across all sectors in being able to get quite intimate with our players, and we should. There's nothing to stop us doing this. So, intuition and analytics happens in a virtuous circle where we're collecting data, we're monitoring our key metrics, whether that's retention rates or whether that's revenues. We're not analysing, and we can't analyse off dashboards. Dashboards just skate across the surface. You've got to get deep into the data. We've invested in high-speed technologies, fast databases, to allow us to give our clients access to very low-level data at very affordable prices. And that's where the value lies. If you can look at how long it's taking players to go through particular levels, if you can see how many times they fail a particular mission, if you can see how quickly they're running out of resources, then you're really able, from an analytics point of view, steer the development of the game and give the information to the designers to really make a great experience. So it's got to be deeper analytics, it's got to be data mining, it's got to be slice and dice, it's got to be using funnels effectively, and stop guessing about, if you're guessing in terms of where you're going with your design, then you've missed a trick. You should not be guessing, you should know. And then you've got to do something with that insight, whether it's changing the game design as a whole, rebalancing the economy, or using that intuition and that analytics to develop these messaging strategies. So in-game messaging, push notification, change the game balancing. There's lots of different things that you can do. And this is all within our ability to analyze, to trigger, and message in real time. Our technology is developed to really allow us to close this loop. So we evaluate each of the messages, we evaluate how the retention rates are increasing overall, and we keep going. And we can optimize as we go along. This is why we think that there's a cultural shift that is happening, and the best and the most successful companies are actually putting analytics and intuition at the heart of how games are being developed now, and going around this iterative loop, constantly tweaking the development and the design based on the insights that are generated from the analytics. I forgot that built. Sorry. Here's an example to finish off. We work with one of our clients is PlaySpace in Mallorca in Spain, a great company run by Alfonso Villar. They've been really successful in the sort of social casino space with bingo and parche, moving into slots now. And we were working with them for a while and continue to work with them to understand why the games were not working. They were not being particularly viable. Although they looked nice, it looked like a good experience, and there's nothing offensive about the games at all. So we looked at it, we played it, we analysed it, and we came up with some quite specific recommendations based on the different types of playing styles that we found in there. Special hints for people struggling. So we could see people actually being quite slow at moving through the tutorial. So we really tried to put them down another funnel, which gave them an enhanced tutorial. Recognizing where players were quite expert and putting them into the multi-game aspect quicker. Recommending next best purchases. Free items as daily bonuses as a engagement tool. Deal of the day worked super well in terms of monetizing people. And all items were purchased with in-game currency. And that was quite a trick in terms of economy balancing. We were managing inflation problems within the economy, because obviously gifting gives us another problem in terms of having too much money in the economy potentially. So we also balanced that gifting with soaking up some of the virtual currency through other techniques. Fantastic results. The 30% increase in engagement. nearly 3 times increase in the number of people that were interacting with the store. The segmentation stuff that we were doing looked around players that were in recovery mode, having had a couple of losses. Fast-track VIPs, so the potential whales and how they were building their momentum. Persistent grinders that were getting there slowly and starting to engage properly. And people that were kind of bumping along the bottom, not doing too well, but staying in the game and dealing with it. Through the sorts of techniques that we deployed in our technology that were mentioned on the previous slide, the amount of virtual currency spent per user was 6-fold increase in the virtual currency and 20-fold increase in the real currency. So we're really shifting the dial dramatically. We didn't change the game, but we changed the way that the game worked with the different players in the game. And you can see the graph just went off the scale. So we also were able to balance the gifting and the monetization to deal with the internal economy, inflation. And so by deploying this technique and really getting to know your players, getting intimate with your players, and thinking about them as you deliver an experience to them, we're really seeing a dramatic change in numbers. So as we come back full circle, we then can deal with our acquisition turmoil because we know that as we put players into the game, they're going to have a great experience. One thing that just to mention before I finish is that we're actually changing, we're pre-announcing here at Casual Connect that we're rebranding to Delta DNA. I hope you like the new logo. Our platform is being launched here and at GDC, and we'd love to talk to you about it if you're interested in finding out more. Thank you very much.
We've time for a couple of questions. Maybe I'll start off. Can you explain how the technology plugs in? Do you actually go to a game, analyze the results, and then make recommendations for them to do a revision, and then they do it, wash, rinse, repeat, and do from there? Or is it actually baked dynamically into the game, and so as a player, you'll see things change depending on your play styles immediately in the game?
So what we have is an SDK, because everybody's got an SDK, right? We get the rich data out of the game. We then can use our advanced analytics. Our clients use the advanced analytics, or we can guide them as support to really understand the player segments, the player behaviours, why players are leaving, why they're spending, why they're not spending. All of these things. We can configure that then into our real-time scoring engine. And as players come through the game, we can then push them into different treatment groups in real time. Our technology responds in our maximum in our SLA is 400 milliseconds, so that from the game's point of view, from the player's point of view, there's no interruption in the experience. But let's say that we set up a trigger for when players sink below 50 gems, and they're in their first session, and they've not got to mission 3 yet, we'll trigger a gift, for example, in real time, and that will then respond as we see players with those characteristics in the game.
And how often, so that's real-time response, which is awesome. How often do you rejigger what the algorithms happen to be based on data you've been collecting?
So this is where the virtuous circle comes in, and if we can see that a message is not working as well as we'd like, then we can tweak it. We can go back and do some more analytics and do A/B testing. Is 50 the right answer? Maybe it's 60, maybe it's 40. So there is the ability to constantly optimize this. In reality, as long as the message is doing a job, you probably not want to constantly be doing this advanced analytics stuff. You tend to do that in bursts of activity. And then you have the dashboards and the performance monitoring to really allow us to understand which interventions are contributing to the engagement.
And if you have to change that, does your algorithm allow it to be done real time, or does it need a patch for the game to be hacked?
No, so actually all of the intelligence happens on our server side. So there's campaign management and selection management functionality, so that you can change the selection as a user at any time. So you're completely in control. What I should say as well is that we've been working on rules of engagement and contact management rules, so that we don't over-message. It's very easy to set up lots of really good ideas for interventions, but trouble with that is that you need then some filter to sort out any conflicts in logic to make sure that we're not over-messaging people. So all of that sort of protection is built into the technology as well.
We have time for a quick question from the audience? Well, if you're shy, I'm sure Mark will be available afterwards to answer any questions about it. Thank you very much, Mark.
Thanks for your time.